Joven Cosico. I am Joven Cosico and presenting web services. Okay, what is a web service? Web service is a service available over the web. It enables communication between applications over the web. It provides a standard protocol format for communication, a software system designed to support interoperable machine-to-machine interaction over a network. Web services are XML-based information exchange system that use the internet for direct application-to-application interaction. This system can include programs, object, message, or documents. A web service is a collection of open protocols and standards used for exchanging data between application or a system. Why we use it web services? Web services is a platform-independent communication. Using web services, two different applications can talk to each other and exchange data information. Web services help you to exchange data between different applications and different platforms. It allows applications to communicate, exchange data, and share services among themselves. Web services are specifically designed to be used as a web page request and help us to receive data. Okay, what is the importance of web service? Nowadays, the importance of using web services have been increased widely as it provides more procedural way for communication. It provides a common way for communication and easiness of programming. It also runs faster on a server. What is a web service and why is called a web service? What is the difference between a web service and a web page? Okay, let's start for a simple question. What is the web? For a bit of context, let's first ask what is the internet? The internet is a worldwide computer network that connects computer, smartphones, and many other devices. The internet just connects these devices in the sense it is like the telephone network. It simply provides connectivity. The internet can be used for different applications. Popular examples are emails, file transfer, and web. This application can use specific protocols, and while the internet just connect computers, these application protocols then connect programs that run on these connected devices. The web is just one of these internet application. It allows running on one computer, the web browser to send a request to a programming running on another computer. The web server, the response contain web page that is displayed by your browser, and when you click on a link in the page your browser simply retrieves the next page. That the web in a nutshell. Okay, web services also have advantage and disadvantage. Let's discuss the advantage of utilizing web services are. One is revealing the existing function of framework. A web administration is managed code that can be remotely called using HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. That is, it intends to be started using HTTP inquiries. Web administration empower you to uncover the handiness of your present code over the framework. At the point when it's uncovered on the framework, other application can use the handiness of your program. Next is interoperability. Web service interoperability objectives are to give consistent and program association starting with one programming application, then onto the next. Cleanser, WSDL, and UDDI convention characterized as self-depicting approach to find and call a product. Application strategy, paying little mind to area or stage. Information is marshaled into XML solicitation and reaction reports and move between programming bundles utilizing HTTP or message-based convention. Interoperability issues creep in the disclosure definition and solicitation reaction instrument. Next advantages is ordered protocol. Web administration use the institutionalized industry standards show for the correspondence, all the 4 layers service transport, XML, messaging service description, and service discovery layers use well-described show in the web organization show stack. This systematization of show stack gives the business various focal point, for instance, a wide extent of choices, a decline in the cost due to contention of augmentation in the quality. Next advantage is ease of use. Web services are intended to be utilized over the web. That is simply similarly, a page is brought, one can get web administration capacity over the web. The ability of web administration shifts from straightforward data query to complex algorithm calculation. Thusly, when help is utilized to uncover a business rationale at the point, it can be used without much of stretch utilized. Okay, let's discuss the disadvantage of web services. First disadvantage is the availability. Everyone who uses the internet knows that no site is 100% available. It follows that web services which use the same infrastructure as website will not be 100% available either, even if the server is up and running. Your internet service provider might not be, or the ISP hosting the other side of the transaction might not be either. Next disadvantage is matching requirements. Anytime you create a general service that will handle a variety of customers, you will run into specialized requirements. Some customers might require the one extra little features that nobody else needs. Web services are envisioned as of one size fit many customer technology. If your business can fit into that model, you should consider other solution. Next disadvantage is immutable interfaces. Immutable interfaces, if you invest in creating a web service for your customers, you have to avoid changing any of the methods that you provide and the parameters that your customer expect you can create new methods and add them to the service. But if you change existing one, your customers' programs will break. This is easy to do until you find that one of your existing method is returning wrong answer and cannot be repaired because the approach is fundamentally flawed. Early release of Java contained methods for calculating date and time differences that could not be made to work correctly. Next disadvantage is guaranteed execution. The whole idea behind having a computer program instead of doing a job by hand is that the program can run unattended. HTTP is not a reliable protocol in that it does not guarantee deliver or response. If you need the kind of guarantee, either write the code to retry requests yourself or arrange to send your request through an intermediary who will perform these retries for you. Again, newer version of the specification allow for using protocols such as JMS to resolve this issue, but the majority of services out there still utilize HTTP, which does not. Okay, what are the different types of web services? One is XML RPC, which is remote procedure call. This is the most basic XML protocol to exchange data between a wide variety of devices on a network. It uses HTTP to quickly and easily transfer data and communication other information from client to server. Next is UDDI, Universal Description, Discovery, and Integration. It is a XML-based standard for detailing, publishing, and discovering web services. It's basically an internet registry for businesses around the world. The goal is to streamline digital transaction and e-commerce among the company system. Next is SOAP. It's an XML-based web services protocol to exchange data and documents over the HTTP or SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. It allows independent process operating on disparate systems to communicate using XML. Next is REST. Provides communication and connectivity between devices and the internet. For API-based tasks, most RESTful services use HTTP as the supporting protocol. Okay, here are some well-known web services that use markup languages. One is the JSON RPC. Next is JSON WSP. Next, Web Services Description Language, which is WSDL. Next is Web Services Conversation Language, WSCL. Next is Web Services Flow Language, WSFL. Next is Web Services Metadata Exchange, WS Metadata Exchange. Next is lastly XML interface for network services. Okay, there are three roles in web services architecture. One is service provider. From an architectural perspective, it is the platform that hosts the services, builds the web services, and making it work for a client looking for the service. Next is service requester. Service requester is the application that is looking for and invoking or initiating an interaction with a service. The browser plays the requester role driven by a consumer or a program without user interface. The client application can be written in any programming language but still be able to communicate with the server application. Next is service registry. Service registry find the service and obtaining binding information for services during development. Okay, next, operation in a web service architecture. We have three operation in a web service architecture. One is publish. In the publish operation, service description must be published so that a service requester can find the service. A provider makes available the service to all clients who are using the broker's interface for publishing and informs the broker about the web service existence. Next is find. In the find operation, the service requester retrieves the service description directly. It can be involved in two different lifestyle phases for the service requester. The service requester try to find a published web service through the broker. And lastly is the bind. In the bind operation, the service requester invokes or initiates an interaction with the service at runtime using the binding details in the description. In the description to locate contact and evoke the service, requester can do web service invocation using the information gained. Next is web service characteristic. They are XML based. Web service uses XML to represent the data at the representation and data transportation layers using the XML eliminates any networking, operating system, or platform sort of dependency since XML is the common language understood by all. Next is loosely coupled. Loosely coupled means that the client and the web service are not bound to each other, which means that even if the web service changes over time, it should not change the way the client calls the web service. Adopting a loosely coupled architecture tends to make software system more manageable and allows simpler integration between the different systems. Next, synchronous or asynchronous functionality. Synchronicity refers to the binding of the client to the execution of the service. In asynchronous operation, the client will actually wait for the web service to complete an operation. An example of this probably scenario wherein a database read and write operation are being performed. If the data is read from one database to another, subsequent written to another, then an operation have to be done in a sequential manner. Asynchronous operation allows a client to invoke a service and then execute other functions parallel. This is one of the common and probably the most preferred techniques for ensuring that the other services are not stopped when a particular operation is being carried out. Next is the ability to support remote procedure calls, RPC. Web services enable clients to invoke procedures function and methods on a remote object using the XML-based protocol. Remote procedure expose input and output parameters that the web service must support. Next is support document exchange. One of the key benefits of XML is its generic way of representing not only data, but also complex documents. These documents can be as simple as representing a current address, or they can be as complex as representing an entire book. Okay, ito yung mga list of web services framework natin. If you can see the first column, you see the name. Mas familiar tayo. I think everyone na narinig nyo na yung Apache, .NET framework. Ito yung mga common na naririnig natin na mga web services. Kapag nag-check tayo, for example, sa control panel, then programs, then you can see the most common na yung sa Microsoft na laging nire-required na install is yung .NET framework. Ito yung common na ginagamit natin. Then yung next column is the platform. Then ma-check niyo siya kung anong type ng platform gumagana yung ano natin. It's either Java, PHP, Java, C++, .NET. Then yung next natin, messaging model destination, it's either client or server. Dalawa lang naman yung natin is client at server, yung from the start at end nung transferring ng data from beginning at the end. Then the last column is yung protocol, where yung pinakita natin during discussion yung yung SOAP, WSDL, REST, ito yung mga type ng protocol na nagra-run for each type ng web services na framework. Okay. Okay, for example, ito yung example natin na i-illustrate natin na, for example, we are going to a restaurant or a hotel for having a dinner. We are going to communicate our order to the kitchen, and the kitchen going to serve our order. There is a person who is involved in communication, process the person, takes your order from your table, goes to the kitchen and places the order and takes your food from the kitchen. One is prepared and you get your food through the same person. And who is that person? The person is the waiter. Our waiter is performing the role of a web service API, or we can also say web service. He is the communicating between two applications is proper and successful. To further explain, for example, you speak an English, but the chef inside the kitchen speak Chinese and you do not understand each other. The person who makes sure two application can communicate with each other, and whatever response you have to get from the server or whatever request a server has to get from a client is in a format where two entities can understand each other and communicate. So here you are the client and the kitchen is the server, and you are communicating with each other. The role of the waiter is the web service becomes very important. Next is another example is the picture you can see below on how web service client workstation, how to communicate by means of internet, how client requests a message and web service responds with the message. Ito yung kung mapapansin nyo, yung sa ilalim niya, yung client, kung paano siya nagko-communicate through a web service using parang ang waiter siya yung internet, magre-request si computer, request, then go to the web service, then si web service magre-response pabalik kay client. Okay, another example, let's overview the working of web services. We have one server which web services running, and we have a client system in which standalone application is running. Let's consider that this client application wants to invoke some service from the server application, and for this type of client application should know what type of service the server's application is. Providing for this purpose, the server will generate a WSDL document, what the described values, use, and format of the web service. This file will send to the registry UDDI software, where stored the file in a unique name. The client will access the WSDL file from UDDI registry. So the client will generate some classes called stub. Using stub generation tool, these classes will some method or services where the client want from the server, where the stub can convert to XML document and called a SOAP request. The SOAP request will need to be sent to the server location, which is moved by the HTTP protocol to HTTP server. The HTTP server send a SOAP request to the skeleton. What is the skeleton? The skeleton is predefined class which depends on the service class. The skeleton will invoke the client request from the server application and will get the response from server, which will SOAP response, and it is an XML document. Now this SOAP response need to be sent to a client application, which is again sent by the HTTP protocol to the client side. Now, as the SOAP response is available in the client side, it will read by the stub again and will return some value which is given to the client application. So in this way, web service work between the client and the server. Ito yung example natin between a client and server kung paano siya nagko-communicate. Papunta HTTP server, HTTP server to server, kung paano niya binabalik yung response ni server do sa request ni client. Okay, sir, this is my end of presentation. Thank you for watching. Stop.
Okay, I just want to address the criticism of these web services, no? Non-RESTful web services are frequently criticized for being overly complex and relying on major software vendors or integrators rather than standard open source implementation. So again, as I mentioned earlier, no, there are 3 subset WSDLs are open concatenated to generate the combined WSDL, which is subsequently used to test the web service for regression. So by completing the selection of relevant test cases to generate a smaller test suite from the existing test suite, this will aid automated web service change management. And several test automation tools such as SOAP or the SOAP, UI, Oracle Application Testing Suite, Unified Functional Testing, Selenium, and others can be used to automate web service testing. And I think that's it for this topic.